I welcome the friends, Rotarian friends. It's a great pleasure to have Professor Harminder Singh Dua from Nottingham with us, and I think the best way to introduce is he's one of the best human beings I've ever met, well learned. Most of them are non-medical here, and the reason we wanted a Professor Harminder Singh, but unfortunately he was there only 2 days, and in that day I wanted to keep the Rotary meeting, and we didn't have anybody having the Rotary meeting today. But still I decided I will, because I wanted to listen, and the Rotary International, with 10,000 delegates, I honored him in Lisbon, and I thought he's coming from Maharashtra. That is, he worked in Nagpur and in Pune, and through his friend in Rotary in Nagpur, he has achieved one of the stepping stones in his life. So I thought youngsters here and people who are not Rotarians to know the benefit of being a Rotarian. And I'm happy the man who introduced me to Rotary is Rotarian Sivan. And I recognize Rotarian Sivan because he's the one who made me give the first talk in early 2000 in Preetham Midtown when we met, and later he made me a member and then made me a president also. And then that 52 weeks I was there. But in between the meetings I used to travel. Somehow I was there 52 weeks. So, and after that I'm struggling, but I'm happy. Rotary gave me a chance to do service through another center in Siam, in Dharavi, near the railway station, which unfortunately we lost the place. But we are continuing with a new foundation, which is 10th year now, and always Rotarians support me. And we have a foundation called Aditya Jyot Research Institute, where again we have another Rotarian, Dr. Srinivasan, as the managing trustee, who has also, we are supporting free cataract surgery through our trust, and also to the poor people who want to study, we are giving them scholarship. So with this, I wanted to introduce you to Harminder Singh Dua.
Thank you once again, Dr. Natarajan, for your very kind hospitality, your invitation, and your generous introduction. And I'm grateful to all of you, the Rotarians who are here, and I will express that gratitude through my talk. So thank you for coming. What I've done for this talk is I'm going to give you a PowerPoint presentation for a short while, 15-20 minutes. Then there will be a video which, instead of trying to repeat what I said at my acceptance speech in Lisbon, I'm going to play, and apologies to those who see that video or were at Lisbon. And after that, I'll have just 2 or 3 more slides to finish off. So that's in 3 little parts. So I begin with this one quote that I wrote: "Life is the summation of the opportunities that present, and the choices one makes when those opportunities present." And this pretty much sums up my career path. So my first opportunity, which I also refer to as my first encounter with destiny. My mother always wanted me to become a doctor. My inclination was to become an Air Force officer like my father, to join the Indian Air Force, very much taken up by the uniform and the discipline of the military. But my dad said to me, "No way, you're going to join the Air Force. You're going to first graduate from university, and then," so I said, "Okay, I'll go to university. And what do I do in university?" So he said, "Well, become an aeroplane engineer." And aeronautical wasn't a word in my vocabulary then, so I said, "Okay, I'll become an aeroplane engineer." And joined a school. Now, if you remember, those of you who are old enough, that in those days, at the age of 14, so you join school at 5, and by the time you're 14, when you're entering class 9, you have to decide whether you take physics, chemistry, and biology of physics, chemistry and mathematics. If you took physics, chemistry and mathematics, you became an engineer. With physics, chemistry and biology, you became a doctor. So a 14-year-old boy has to decide that. Very difficult. And the other thing that happened to me at the time was I was in Gwalior with my parents, and the school in which I finished my class 8 did not take boys after class 8 now. I always wondered why. But after that it became a girls' school. So I had to go to Delhi to join the Air Force Central School to taking physics, chemistry, mathematics, which I did, and I joined. And we had to start 2 weeks before school started. So I was admitted to this school, and there I met a friend, Harminder Singh Dua. Never met him since, but he and I became good friends, and we played together, we studied together and all that. And the first day of school, we went to school. I went to school, and I sat there in my class, and this gentleman had not turned up for class, Mr. Sirai. And he was a young boy, and he was 14 years like me. And when Kanwaljit Singh Sirai didn't come, I was a bit concerned. We were good friends. And first time away from home, me on my own, I had bonded with this gentleman, this little boy then. And first class finished, second class finished. So 11 o'clock when we broke for the first little break, a small break, I went to the play field, and there this guy was. And I said, where have you been? Why didn't you come to class? And he said, where have you been? You weren't in class. I said, I was in class. I said, which class? I said, there. He said, oh, that's 9A, that's mathematics. I'm in biology. So I picked up my bag, went to class 9B, and became a doctor. And that's literally how it happened. So it was written. And my mom said, I always wanted you to be a doctor, but I wasn't going to force you. God listened to me. I joined this medical school, the Government Medical Hospital, Nagpur. That's where I did my medical schooling. And when I was an intern, I was picked to do, as a member of the group study exchange program of the Rotary Club. The Rotary Club in Nagpur picked me. This was way back in 1981. And this is how I looked then. Some people say I look the same today. I think they're right. But what had happened is that from all the Rotary clubs, there were 15 applicants for the Nagpur Rotary Club, and 2 of us were selected. And from all the Rotary clubs in the district, a total of 103 of us went to a place for the final interview. And there I was selected as a group study exchange team member. This gentleman, Somasundar Sai, was our Rotarian team leader. You can see from his crest, and the other were the 5. In those days, there were no women in Rotary, and this team was made of men only, and there were no women. So District 315 then in India, visiting District 7 to 8 in Pittsburgh. Things have changed then. So just some memories. You can see that over here. It says December 7, 1981. These are some pictures of the time, with 5 young men and a Rotarian. We went and we had a time of our lives. We lived with Rotarian families, we traveled a lot, we attended Rotary meetings, we visited a variety of places, schools, factories, we had games, we had baseball games, and shops and business and clinics, and ophthalmologists. A special effort was made for me to meet some ophthalmologists to start in my ophthalmology training, and parks and all that. So we went through many, many places. These are some snapshots, some black and white, some colored of those days, and they've all been sort of digitized from the Kodak images. And here again some more movies you can see, and the only difference is I had a little less beard then. And that's us, the group in various places. So, like I said, I even got to fly a plane. We went up in an agricultural plane, and I was sitting in the front, and when we were up, the pilot said, okay, it's all yours. I said, what? And there I was flying, but I didn't land or take off. At that time, then, having finished my MBBS and progressed through ophthalmology, and I became a reader in Nottingham, in Nagpur. And then I had this desire or destiny took me to come to the UK. And I compared this to a game of snakes and ladders. So I was a reader. Reader is pretty high up in the hierarchy of your profession. But I came down this snake, and I became a senior house officer, which is again the lowest rung of your training, in Huddersfield in Nottingham. Well, not in Nottingham, sorry, I came to Huddersfield in England. And there somebody had advised me that when you go to England, make sure you get into a teaching hospital. And I was trying, those are the district hospital and teaching hospital, and I tried my very best. And a job came up in this place called Nottingham. So I applied. I wasn't even shortlisted. They said the competition was too tough, etc. You're not good enough. So I was not. Then I went and did a locum job in Aberdeen. Aberdeen is up in Scotland. And this was where my clinic was. Very beautiful, scenic town by the sea. Very cold. It gets very dark. 3 o'clock, it's pitch dark in the winter. And then I went through as a locum, as a registrar, became a substantive registrar, became a senior registrar under one Professor John Forrester. I got a very thorough grounding and training all over again, from reader to the whole training process all over again. And then I was ready to become a consultant when that snakes and ladders game came up again. And from a senior registrar is what you finish and you become a consultant. But this time it was a shorter snake. I went to Philadelphia to become a fellow. And I became a fellow and started doing cornea training in the Wills-Eye Hospital. And although I was fluctuating up and down in my posts, I was gaining knowledge, experience, and expertise with every position I had. So even as an SHO, I learned things I was not able to do as a reader in Pune. So for me, it was progress all the way, although the title of my post changed. And then that's where I just want to take you through a little bit of what I did and what I do in ophthalmology. And this training was imparted to me in Nagpur, in Huddersfield, in the UK, in Aberdeen, and in Philadelphia. So if you look at the eye, we all know the clear part of the eye, and this is, for those who are not ophthalmologists, called the cornea, and there are the lids. And the rest of it is this transparent membrane called the conjunctiva, and the whole thing together is called the ocular surface. But where the black of the eye joins the white of the eye is where the mother cells, or the stem cells of the eye live. And they're absolutely crucial for the regeneration of the surface and keeping the eye transparent and preserving sight. So that's what I got interested in these stem cells. So the next few pictures have a hazard warning that they may look a bit gory. There's no blood. So you can imagine with disease, the clear part of the eye can become like this, very scarred, and you can't see because the whole eye is okay. It's like a camera, but the lens has gone opaque, or where you forgot to take out the cover and you're trying to take a picture. So everything inside is okay. So if only we could change that, and of course, a lot of cornea transplants have been done, and people used to replace the clear parts. Initially they were like this, and then they became round. So you can imagine an eye like this, which is also actually leaking, and you can convert it to an eye like this. The patient starts to see. It's a huge plus for the patient, almost like a new life. So these were cornea transplants, and these were pretty successful. As you can see, an eye like that can become an eye like that. These are the stitches that hold the graft in place. And here's another one where the surface got a scarring, but it's also a little distorted. And these are before and after pictures of some more cornea transplants, all very successful. And eye donation became a big thing. And eye donation initially it's always there, but is to take straight from the patient and transplant to the recipient. But then we had to wait because we had to check them for the blood, for the HIV test, for the AIDS test, and the viral infection test. So we had to keep the eye. And then preservative media started to be made, and you can now keep the eye for 4 weeks. And in this eye donation program was my first interaction with Rotary professionally. The amount of help they gave in raising awareness, in funding these programs, in literally my profession seemed to depend on the effort put in by Rotarians for us to get the eyes to do this off. So that's where I took my hat off for the first time to the Rotarians got more involved with Rotary. And these are some of the ways we cut the eye, the right size to transplant the tissue from the donor eye to the recipient, and you can see here the first 4 stitches are in place and so on. And these are some examples again of the different kinds of stitches. But at that time, we were beginning to realize more and more the role of the stem cells and how they can make a beautifully done graft fail if they are not right. And in the quest of pursuing that, I then went to the USA. And I went to, I'd gone to the USA and to learn these things. And while I was in the States, I got a phone call one day from the senator of the University of Nottingham. And the phone rang, I was having lunch in the cafeteria, and somebody picked it up and said, "Dr. Dua here?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's for you." This senator was saying, "We have the chair of ophthalmology vacant in Nottingham. Will you come back and join us? Come and join us." And I said, same place where they said I was not good enough to be a senior house officer is now offering me the chair. And all because of what I had gained in Philadelphia. So the moral there was, the more snakes you encounter in your career, the odds of finding the ultimate ladder become higher. And I found that ladder and came back to Nottingham. And that's where we started this work on stem cells. So you can imagine this eye. If you do a cornea in the middle, as we have done here, that corneal graft is completely failed because the stem cells are all destroyed. The white of the eye and the black of the eye, where the stem cells live, is completely destroyed. And here, even a corneal graft is not good enough. So you have to do stem cell transplants. And we developed techniques and we adapted existing techniques. So effectively, you take this junction of the black of the eye from the white of the eye, a very thin sliver of tissue, either from a living relative, a brother, sister, parent, or from somebody who's died. And if the other eye is not involved, you can take it from the non-involved eye and transplant it to the involved eye. And you then remove all the dirty tissue on the top, the scar tissue on the top, and you transplant these two pieces over here, and you can combine it with the graft or do a graft later. And this is an example of this patient who had a chemical burn, cement went in the eye, a huge ulcer which doesn't heal, stem cells are all gone and he's not seeing, and he's at risk of this eye generating a hole and being lost. So we then we cut out all the abnormal tissue and we transplant the stem cells, as you can see, from his other eye, and cells start to grow from that region of the stem cells on the other eye, and these cells grow and they repopulate the whole surface, and the eye like this becomes an eye like this. You can see the transplants over there, and this patient didn't even need a cornea transplant. So that was the magic of understanding the biology of stem cells and how we could regenerate the surface of the eye. And here's a child born with this condition called aniridia, very scarred cornea, and they have a birth deficiency of stem cells. That's why the eye becomes like this. So we took her mother's stem cells from here, you can see, and then we transplanted it to the daughter above and below, and over time it all got repopulated, and the surface was very clear, but inside she had a dense cataract. So we then did her cataract and put an artificial iris lens inside, and that's how that eye became. So this girl, her vision improved to whatever was the potential given her other problems. And then there were ways of taking the stem cells from a cadaver eye or donor eye if you don't have a living relative or you don't have another good eye. So you can dissect it out, take this tissue, and here are some examples I showed you earlier where we did this, and you can see that ring of tissue with stem cells and a cornea graft in the center. So all of these patients were given sight back by this knowledge of stem cells, and this has expanded quite a lot now. We can grow stem cells in the lab, expand them, put them back on the eye. Simultaneous with this kind of development was the introduction of the amniotic membrane. Now, this is the lining of the baby in the womb, in the uterus of the mother. And this amniotic membrane has a lot of healing qualities. So I actually pioneered its use in the United Kingdom. And we were able to take this amniotic membrane and regenerate the surface of the eye, and also now we grow cells on this and put them on the eye. You can see how it looks, and when you separate and take only the thin transparent bit of the membrane, and you can see this eye, this patient has a shingles ulcer on the surface, the cornea is melting, you can see how deep it's gone. You can cut pieces of membrane, stack it up and stitch it on, and over time the cells grow on it, and you take the stitches out and you can see that part of the eye is now level. The bit of the membrane is there, it may or may not remain, but the patient can see good now, and that risk is averted of him losing the eye due to it melting and forming a hole. So this membrane came to good use, and here's a patient with a more familiar kind of appearance, a very dense ulcer in the eye. We could take a membrane and we could stick it on this. The ulcer is not responding to treatment, but you stick a membrane on and you keep the same antibiotics going, and lo and behold, that ulcer heals. And you can see over here, it has healed, and finally, that's how the eye looked. And the cataract was attached to the cornea, and we did a cataract. And this was an 87-year-old lady, so she had a very good outcome from the use of this membrane. So those were the main area of work and research I do in cornea and in the amniotic membrane and stem cells. So professional development was there, but in addition to that, there was also this huge element of development of the profession. So not only my professional development, but supporting my profession. And in that process, I have so far supervised 43 PhD, MPhil, MD students. I've had 20 fellows who trained under me, who paid fellows, and a huge number of other visiting fellows. About 325 scientific publications, book chapters, and so forth. We've also developed 4 new surgical procedures which are adopted all over the world, and some other classifications and things. And we've made new discoveries helping improving outcome for patients and understanding diseases. We are the leading international center for ocular surface stem cell therapy, for ocular surface disease management, and scores of specialists from all over Europe and the Middle East come to Nottingham to learn certain techniques, skills, watch, and go back. So, as they say, my teacher was Ishwar Chandra sir. He taught me and I teach him, and that Henry Adams saying that the teacher affects eternity, you never know where his influence will stop. And that's cascading through from generations of teachers through students. And in all of this, the Rotarians made a huge contribution, which I didn't highlight other than when I mentioned it for the first time with eye donation. Not only for eye donation, many eye camps I did in India with the help of Rotary funding. We used to go out to the villages and treat cataracts and other diseases. A lot of school screening programs. I remember once I was doing the school screening program. We went to a school, Hudders High School in Nagpur Junior. We went to class and found so many students who couldn't see the board, all because they needed glasses. So I asked this young boy, I said, why aren't you wearing glasses? Don't you know you need glasses? He said, I know, but my father can't afford to buy me a pair. And I was so touched by that. So when I made my report to the Rotarians in one of our meetings, Rotary meeting, I wasn't a Rotarian then, and I said, this is what happened, and this is what this boy said. And I still remember, it made a huge impact on my life. And a gentleman like Natarajan, Edilji, a very charitable, philanthropic individual, got up and said, how much does it cost to provide glasses to the children? I said, I haven't a clue, but we can find out. Whatever it costs, I will donate the money. Instantaneously, the Rotarian got up and said, and the whole class that we had screened, 2 of them, all the students who needed glasses were given glasses funded by a Rotarian Act. This is the spirit of an organization that is doing so much good. And then, even in a place like Nottingham in England, we wanted new instruments to do a new kind of an operation. And the trust didn't have money to buy the instruments. And the Rotarian stepped forward and said, how much is it going to cost? I said, I don't know, but it's this much money. He said, fine. They raised the money, gave me this huge big check, like they gave this big check at the actual effective small check. We had pictures and we went and bought the instruments, we started that. And that's happened with not only instruments but certain equipment as well. Even in developed Western countries where funding is shortages, the Rotarians have stepped in and have directly impacted on what I do. So that's why I owe so much to Rotary, and that's why I titled this talk, my progress on the Rotary Wheel. And it didn't end there. Of course, all these achievements that I had weren't achieved alone. And I mentioned Rotary's contribution, but there are others. There are lots of people. It's all about team working. And teams are what? So we have to learn to work with each other, support each other, and take each other forward. So you either push the ones who are not so able, but if you're at the top, you pull them towards you, but you take your team along. And I've got this little anecdote when I was in the clinic one day and my regular nurse hadn't come. There was a sister with a blue uniform standing like this. I saw the first patient, I saw the second patient, I saw the third patient, and she looked at me and said, seeing that there's nothing for me to do, I'll go away. I said, well, seeing that there's nothing for you to do, you can make me a cup of tea. He said, what? Oh, me, this blue uniform, you expect me to make a cup of tea? I said, I'm sorry, I apologize, but my regular nurse always made me a cup of tea, and I thought you might do so same, but I'm really sorry. And then I said, but it's actually all about team working. You are here with me in the clinic, we are a team, and believe me, I said, if you wanted a cup of tea and I was doing nothing, I would make you one. I make one for my wife every day, so I have no problem making one for you. And then suddenly, as a flash, it came to me. I said, and by the way, do you know that 3/4 of team is tea? And she looked at me and said, for that, I will make you a cup of tea. And she did. And ever since, she's making me a cup of tea. So sometimes it's how you take your team members with you is very important. But of course, my wife, Rita, who was also there holding the fort at home with the kids when I went about doing my things. And then more about her and her response to my travels and my marriage with work. She mentioned in that film. But I've got some very humorous anecdotes about this, where they say, behind every successful man is a woman, and the wife is not far behind. Somebody said, and somebody else said, oh, behind every successful man there's a woman, and behind every unsuccessful man there are two. So, well, but for me, she was the wife and the woman both rolled into one. And summarizing then this journey that started in 1981, the defining moment of my career, the seed of my growth, as I put it. A 34-year journey of science and service. And it culminated in 2011 as really the pinnacle of my career when I was president of the Royal College of Ophthalmologists, and that's me sitting on the president's chair with my college gong on. And it didn't end there with the Rotarians. In 2012, I had a deja vu, I got this email from Rotarian Dr. Mukaddam in Nagpur, India, the same club that had sponsored me for the GSC team program. And he said, I want you to apply, send me your CV, I want to apply on your behalf for this Global Service to Humanity Award. It took me a nostalgic path down memory lane about all that I had done in those 31 years to send him. And then, as you know, the process of this is pretty elaborate. The whole world is divided into 17 zones. Each country, through various Rotarians, submit names. 2 are selected, and finally, the Rotary Foundation trustees, they pick the final winner. And I was very fortunate to receive the 2013 Rotary Foundation Global Review Award. As part of this award, I had to give an acceptance speech in Lisbon, and they wanted me to give them the speech beforehand. I've never done that in my life. Never prepared a speech beforehand. You always look on the way. It is that finally, no, we want it in advance, because there are so many Rotarians who don't speak the language. It's an international meeting. 22,000 Rotarians are going to be there. You have to translate it to hundreds of languages, 102, 105 languages. So we need it before. So I said, okay. So I wrote my speech. And I also found the second purpose is they also wanted to vet it. Now I'm going to be, perhaps at the cost of being, well, it was true, it's a fact. So, and we're all doctors, yes, some are not, but I'll tell you the fact. And what I had written in the beginning of my speech was a story that actually happened in my interview for the GSC team program. That made me a member of the Rotary Alumni. I was sitting over there, and one of the questions, one of the Rotarians who later became, I know what the team leader asked me is that, so you're an eye doctor? I said, yeah. He said, tell me, which is that organ of the body which increases to, 4 times its size in a state of excitement? I thought maybe he's testing me whether I'm shy or can this thing and all that. That was a thought. So I just looked at him and I told him. He said, but doctor, what about the pupil? Which is this, and I said, oh, but that's not an organ, that's a hole in the organ. So I put that in my speech, and they said, oh, we can't put this. So they said, no, because some people might take it, so they took it out. Anyway, I prepared this speech, I gave it to them, they vetted it, and that's what I want to share with you next. So what I'm going to do is just play you this. This is a very good quality recording of that which they sent me, and it actually touches upon various aspects over here. Do we have a sound?
Yeah, sound cable? No? Yeah, we can. Is there no, the cable is not there. Or you can bring it down. Where? Let the speaker here.
We interviewed for the Rotary City Exchange. I was one of about 103 young
Can you hear it? You have a cable, no? You have it down here. Sudarshan, नीचे cable है.
Where is the microphone?
Any idea where is the mic? Speaker here. No, I think it's audible. It's audible.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I
Please reduce it.
accept this award with pride, honor, and humility. As a young training doctor in the city of Nagpur in India, I once traveled to another city called Vijayawada to be interviewed for the Rotary Group Study Exchange Team Selection. I was one of about 103 young men who had descended on a hotel in that city that day. Each one of us had in turn been picked from among several others by the local Rotary clubs. I don't remember much about the interview other than there were 12 interviewers or more sitting around a huge, impressive desk asking a lot of questions. It was a very long and tiring day, a very trying and testing day. But when my name was announced as one of among the 5 lucky ones who were selected, I was absolutely thrilled to bits. Even though I did not know then that my life would change forever for better. Here I am, 32 years later, reflecting on the journey my life and my career have taken me on. If I were to pick one defining moment from amongst all these years, it'll have to be, without a shadow of doubt, my trip to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania as a member of the Group Study Exchange team. is impossible to put in words the experience and the exposure the group study exchange program and other Rotary fellowships provide to young men and women. Words like life-changing, eye-opening, inspirational, awesome come to mind, but each is individually hopelessly inadequate to describe the experience. Collectively, perhaps, they begin to give you some idea of what that experience means. To me, it was all of the above and much more. At that age of 20-something, it was an experience of a lifetime. It had such profound positive influence on my thinking and actions, on my words and my deeds. And I would like to believe that through me on numerous other students, patients, and colleagues whose lives I have touched. On my return to Nagpur, I wrote an article for the Medical Teachers Convention magazine. The article was titled, "Visiting America the Rotary Way." I remember the start of that article in the beginning, describing my journey from Bombay to New York. I had written, "Traveling with the sun, we had 24 hours of daylight. Isn't that a wonderful thought? Let there be no darkness." I had unwittingly captured, at least in part, the Rotary spirit and the spirit for which I would work for the rest of my life as an eye doctor. I have last year visited the Rotary Club of Chesterfield, which is a neighboring town to Nottingham, and given a talk there which I titled, "My Career Progress on the Rotary Wheel." The Rotary Club of Chesterfield and the Inner Wheel have been very generous in the support of my research. My department is a very research-active department, and I had explained to them the research that we are undertaking and the impact it has had on patients' lives. And research, as we know, underpins not only the present, but the future of everything we do today. On the 25th of May, exactly 1 month ago to the day, we published in the highest ranking journal called Ophthalmology, the discovery of a new layer in the human cornea. This has great implications for corneal surgery and for understanding corneal diseases. It went absolutely wild on the web. There are hundreds of news sites, each carrying the story with hundreds and thousands of posts and comments. Now I'm going to share with you some comments and a line of discussion that became very interesting. Somebody commented, "Great discovery, but what is he wearing on his head?" The response was, "You are just showing your ignorance. He's a Sikh, and Sikhs wear a turban on the head." Another comment was, "It's not what on his head, it's what in his head that counts." And the discussion went on to describe Sikhism and Sikhs. And this was on the 12th and 13th of June. And the 14th of June, my daughter came running to me and said, "Dad, this one really cracked me up." And it was someone asking the question, "What did Jesus say to Harminder Dua?" And the answer was, "Seek and thou shalt find." As I said, research underpins everything we do today and the future of everything we do today, and the support that Rotary has given to my research is greatly appreciated. I also remain ever so grateful to Rotary for providing the opportunity to be part of this unique global alumni. It's a privilege which I do not hesitate to recount at every opportunity I get. I congratulate Rotary and thank the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International and every Rotarian across the whole globe for making so much difference to individuals like me and to the world at large. As an eye specialist, it is natural and expected of me to work towards alleviating blindness. I've had the good fortune to work with Rotarians and Rotary clubs in numerous eye lines doing cataract operations and other operations, not only to cure and treat blindness, but also to support those who are incurably blind. It never ceases to amaze me the fortitude and courage with which these individuals serve the community in which they live. And perhaps subconsciously inspired by the first line I wrote in that magazine I told you about, "Let There Be No Darkness," in the context of whether these individuals who are not so lucky should be called the blind or blind people, I had written the following: in our zeal for political correctness, we fail to see that blind can be an acronym for Bring Light in Darkness. As a professional, on behalf of my profession, I would like to thank Rotary International for the enormous contribution it makes to eradicate blindness and supporting those who are less fortunate and remain visually impaired. I am acutely aware that there were many worthy contenders for this award, but I'm really glad the trustees picked me. Even though some of those contenders might have been more worthy than me. Such honor comes one's way only once in a lifetime. It would be a gross understatement to say that it is earned single-handedly. There are many individuals who shape our lives, who make us what we are, who make us complete, and deserve our thanks. I will not name all of them, for they know who they are and are aware of my sincere gratitude. I will, however, express my thanks to Rotarian Dr. Muqaddam, who conceived, supported and encouraged my nomination, to Rotarian Somasundar Sai, who was the GSC team leader, and what a leader he was, the Royal College of Ophthalmologists, United Kingdom, of which I am a servant, and to my family. Behind every successful individual is a family. Thank you. My wife, Dr. Rita, my daughter Aarti, my sons Tanuj and Anuj. Tanuj couldn't join us today, but the rest are all here. They've always been there for me, supporting me, making me what I am, making me complete. They have made their sacrifices, as my work takes me far and wide, but without their help, I wouldn't have succeeded in my endeavors. Traveling is part of my job, and traveling even more is part of all the other hats, or rather turbans, that I wear. I was telling Jennifer Wilbanks this morning, my secretary once put a notice on my office door. I'm sure many Rotarians will relate to this notice. It read, "What is the difference between God and Professor Dua?" And the answer was, God is everywhere. Professor Dua is also everywhere except here. that background, we were at a dinner party once with friends, and my wife, resigned to my travels, just announced to whoever might care to hear, the next time you go out, I'm going to advertise for a locum husband. I thought that was funny till two of my friends volunteered to apply. I would like to especially thank Jennifer Wilbanks, who has kindly taken us around and looked after us, looking after every details for the last 2 days. I would like to thank all of you for being here and sharing this moment with me. Like I said at the outset, I accept this award with pride, honor, and humility. Thank you.
Just 3 more slides, and sorry for that rather long video, but that was the complete acceptance speech, and there were emotions there which I wanted to share with you. In that context, I once wrote that we can never repay the debt we owe to our parents and teachers. This is one debt each generation carries forward and pays back to the next. The only way we can pay back this debt is by doing for our students and our children what our parents and our teachers did for us. And in that mix, I also owe a small debt to Rotary. In that background, I wrote this for the admission ceremony of the Royal College of Ophthalmologists, where every year all the young ophthalmologists who pass the fellowship of the college attend to receive their certificates, which are signed by all the office bearers, including myself, and I personally have to shake each individual's hand and give them their certificate, welcoming them to the fold of the college, and then give a kind of an inspirational speech. So for that occasion, I wrote this: my debt. The finger that I held when I learned to walk, that showed me the words to speak the talk, that turned the pages of knowledge to teach and pointed to stars for me to reach, is part of the hand that waves me on as I grasp the baton and move beyond into the future, living his dream, knowing how much to him it will mean. Time will pass, I'll stand on my feet, I'll extend my hand, the young ones to greet, for in their future I will secure the future forevermore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I request everybody to do a standing ovation to Harminder Singh Dua. I request Rotary to say observation as a Rotarian pastor of the Mumbai Grand Rotary Club, which is one of the oldest clubs of Mumbai. Please sit down. And also, we are very proud of Harminder Singh Dua. One, he is the son of the soil. And the second, he, I think, every minute reminds himself and to the world that he's an Indian, and I think we are very proud of that. And not only that, as an Indian, he remembers, and I know so many of our own Indians who are doing very well, at least in ophthalmology, who many times never visit India, and not only that, never teach. And I think he's very spiritual. He told me every day he spends 25 minutes praying wherever he is and which part of the world, some part of the day. And I think that way I said, in my introduction, is one of the best human beings ever I have met, with knowledge, and one who really like to share. And I think it's really, I'm fortunate. I took 48 hours with him, and I hope whatever you have recorded, we can put it in the YouTube. Okay? You don't have any problems in the yesterday and today, even the.
I downloaded this from YouTube.
Okay, no, not this one. The other talks, whatever you did yesterday in the night, I know it's all published and you have evidences, and even the question answer. So as a Rotarian, I want Rotarian Sivan to say something, as well as if anybody has any questions, I think he'll be happy to answer. And then we'll have Kavita talking.
First of all, let me tell Harminder sir, it's an honor to meet you today, and we are really proud of you. And in Punjabi they say, "Tusi chagayu." Thank you very much.
You want to say something? So if it's to follow the 3 idiots, to see great.
As I know spelling of cornea very well, I know how to see through cornea, but I don't see cornea. But still, I am an admirer of your lectures, and I fortune to be with him from Nagpur to Bombay in flight and eat his head. Though I have not become much wiser, but little wiser. And again, I told Dr. Natarajan that I will come today specifically to listen to your non-ophthalmic talk, and I am sure it will remain with us. May we remain your students always.
Thank you. Kumar, you want to say something? Mr. Sundar? Mr. Sundar, Gita Sundar.
Thank you, Nati. At the outset, I should say that it was a very inspiring talk, and it's a long way and a very successful path that many may not get. And Dr. Dua has put his time and effort in trying to translate the opportunity that Rotary gave him. And his speech was pretty moving, and it shows your humility and humbleness, which very few people still hold when they are famous and popular. Certainly, I've heard of your work and I've interacted with you at some point several years earlier, and your work is a landmark in the corneal ophthalmology, which can never be erased, and that will stay forever. And this is one of the things that I keep telling when I meet ophthalmologists, that in India, to do research, because you can always create a legacy for yourself and a mark that will never be actually erased. Whereas doing clinical practice sort of fades away after you are not there and you pass away. For example, I've interacted with somebody, perhaps Dr. Dua knows, in Moorfields Eye Hospital, Dr. Bainbridge, Dr. James Bainbridge, a hardcore ophthalmologist who devoted himself to research in the last 20 years. He's been in and out of laboratory, and then did gene therapy in a patient or a group of patients with a very severe form of genetic eye disease that leads on to blindness. And so he created history in not only ophthalmology but in the field of medicine. So this is what we lack in India, where clinicians don't take part much in research. So it's the non-clinical people who always get involved in research, though they are excellent. But then if clinicians join in hand, that gives a lot of weightage and fillip to research in India, and which you often see in most of the Western world. So I'm glad that Dr. Natarajan invited me today to give this talk, and I was so glad to hear Dr. Dua and his success story. Thank you.
And one more thing is, I think, other thing I keep remembering, and I forgot to tell yesterday also and today, and we are proud where that the president of College of Ophthalmologists is the one of the highest in the world, in a like College of Ophthalmology from UK, where people struggle to pass exams from India, and then there are many times where they fail, and where he headed that. And apart from that, he and Arun Singh, both Indians and who were the editor of the British Journal of Ophthalmology, where several papers are rejected because the English is not right. So I think we are very proud that the same where the Indian British said that English is not good, and they rule by merit and by work and not just by anger. So I think that way we salute you. So with this, I request Kavita to speak a few words on what she's doing new in Cornea. And plus also we are happy that Professor Dua has agreed and signed a MOU with our research department, and he has already given homework to our cornea surgeons on something on pterygium to Dr. Kavita, and on hydrops corneal condition to Dr. Mamta Tripathi. So I'm happy that he's going to stimulate, even though I'm not a cornea man, but I think like the idea is to learn, because he said first we have to learn to question in the right way and then find the answer, and then again question the answer. And I think that's what he has done. That's how he made a layer which we are all proud the name has been given correctly and aptly, even though there are anything, if there, like Swami Vivekananda says, if you are not criticized, you are not worth enough. So I think you are worth enough, and that's why there are criticisms to Professor Dua. Thank you.
Very good evening. Thanks, Dr. Natarajan. It's a very short talk. I'm just going to talk about a few recent advances and the kind of work that we are doing here at Aditya Jyot. Dr. Dua has already talked about keratoplasty or corneal transplant and what that is. Keratoplasty is it's a surgery where you actually change the front window of the eye if it becomes opaque. The causes of that would be many. He's already shown us a few of them. Just one more thing. Yeah, so the reasons why the front window of the eye could be opaque is when somebody's doing a cataract surgery, it could become white, or it could be a genetic condition, or after chemical burns. So earlier we used to change the entire cornea by removing the full layer of the cornea, which is, I'm sorry for the slide. So this is where you will remove the entire cornea and use sutures to stitch the host donor cornea onto the patient. And the reason that this is not so popular, or because the recovery was much longer, it took a year for getting all the sutures out, the vision was not as good. So that's the reason it was then thought that you should change only the disease layer of the cornea. This is the cornea, which is a histopathological section of it. It's got 5 layers, and the concept came in of treating only the layer which was diseased. So if there was disease in the anterior part of the cornea, you treat only that. And if there's disease in the posterior part of the cornea, you treat only that without using any stitches. So these are again some of the conditions where you can treat only the posterior part of the cornea by removing that and then not use any stitches. This is how the surgery is done. You actually mount the donor cornea onto an artificial anterior chamber and you dissect it, so that you're dissecting the posterior normal layer from the anterior layer, and you then remove the disease layer from the patient, take that out, and inject the layer from the donor onto the into the host. So the way you do it, you don't really need to take any sutures, and that's a huge advantage because the patient then starts seeing well within a week, and within 3 months he's back to his best corrected vision. So that's a huge jump that we have. Then using 16 sutures, and especially in elderly patients, a lot of suture related complications. These are a few of those pictures. As you can see, the front portion of the eye, which is the cornea, has become white, and that has been damaged because of poor cataract surgery probably done elsewhere. And you can see that the patient, now the front window of the eye is completely transparent and good vision has been restored to the patient. Another similar patient where the front window, the cornea has become white. This is actually a genetic condition, and the patient is doing well. Talking about recent advances in refractive surgery, refractive surgery is LASIK, the surgery which is done for removing the number from the eye, and there are so many terms floating in the market. There is blade surgery, bladeless surgery, SMILE. So we just want to talk a little bit about the excimer. We have the latest in excimer which is now being launched at Aditya Jyot. We are getting the machine which will be installed any moment now. This is the 500 Hertz machine which is by Alcon in the market. It is one of the fastest excimer laser. It takes only 1.4 seconds for correcting one diopter. That means if you have -1 number, it can be corrected in around 1.4 seconds, which is really the fastest. It's also the most accurate in the market. It has the broadest range which has been approved by the US FDA, and also it is one of the first ones to be used for the customized wavefront guided ablation. What is bladeless or femtosecond laser? These are the concept came in of not using the blade on the eye while doing the surgery, and why not use the laser, and that's what the femtosecond really does. It uses infrared laser which then goes inside the eye and separates the various corneal collagen lamellae literally like a sheet. So you don't really use the blade on the eye, the laser itself goes and separates the various lamellae, and that's the concept of bladeless LASIK. As you can see on the right hand side, there are various laser pulses which then actually go and join, and then you manually separate that and use the excimer for correcting the number. The advantage of that is that the flap precision is much more accurate. The flap is more planar compared to your blade flap, and that's the advantage of doing a bladeless LASIK. You can see the difference. The flap is a lot more regular, uniform, and much more accurate in the bladeless LASIK. Femtosecond can also be used for doing the full thickness or lamellar keratoplasties. The advantage is that, as you can see, the healing for the eye is a lot better because the incision depth is more precise, and we get lesser wound-related complications because the healing is so much faster. You can get the sutures out much faster if you use the lasers for doing keratoplasty. This is another technique I just wanted to touch upon. This is called a small incision lenticule extraction. This is similar to the bladeless LASIK, but instead of raising the flap, the laser pulses go and create this disc of tissue inside the cornea, which is then pulled out from a 3 millimeters or a 5 millimeter wound. So literally from a 20 millimeter cut, the size of the cut in the eye goes down to 3 to 5 millimeters. So it's ideal for patients who are into a lot of contact sports or who need faster recovery, or also maybe somebody who may be desirous of joining either the Air Force or the Army. So I would say that's a huge advantage in those patients. Thank you so much.
Any questions?
About the latest gauge instruments in vitreoretina, rather 27 gauge vitrectomy, which is practiced at Aditya Jyot. So why 27 gauge? So vitreoretinal surgery, like what Dr. Kavita said, cornea is all going bladeless, so even vitreoretinal surgeries are all going sutureless. And the gauge of instruments is reducing day by day. Why is this better? Because there's less conjunctival trauma, less scleral trauma, less astigmatism, there's early rehabilitation, and there's much better patient comfort. Smaller wounds are more likely to self-seal and prevent hypotony, and also there's a less chance of vitreous prolapse, which may act as a wick and promote endophthalmitis. So where do we do these 27 gauge surgeries? Cases like macular holes, macular puckers, which are like distortions on the surface of the retina, or there's a pull on the surface of the retina known as a vitreomacular traction. A vitreous hemorrhage and a localized or a small tractional retinal detachment can be effectively managed with these latest small gauge vitrectomy systems. Yeah, so these are some of the indications, like that's a macular hole. Then again there's an epimacular membrane over here, or a premacular hemorrhage, which have been managed with 27 gauge vitrectomy. Yeah, so this is what initially when retinal surgery was performed, the patient used to be under a lot of discomfort. We used to do 20 gauge, in which all the scleral wounds need to be sutured, the conjunctiva needs to be sutured. So suture related problems and wound related problems used to be there. The patient discomfort was there, the healing took a longer time, and post-op recovery and astigmatism was much longer. So now there are no more sutures, and 27 gauge vitrectomy, the patient comes with a white eye and he goes with a white eye. So sometimes it's difficult to make out whether surgery has been performed, a complex surgery has been performed or not on such patients. So a 20 gauge vitrectomy, to put it in perspective, is around 0.9 millimeter, 900 microns. So a 27 gauge is almost less than half of that size, around 0.4 millimeter. So through those small ports, around 3 small ports of 0.4 millimeter, even a complex retinal surgery requiring a lot of precision, like a macular hole surgery, can be carried out. And to put it in perspective, a 27 gauge port is just around, if you take a human hair, it's just 10 times the thickness of that human hair. So it's a pretty thin instrument, and that small incision is all that is required inside the eye. These are some of the instruments for vitreoretinal surgery. Initially it was 20 gauge, then came 23 gauge, and then 25, and now the 27. So 27 means it's a smaller instrument. It's a much thinner instrument as compared to 20 gauge. And these are some of the cases which we have recently managed. Dr. Natarajan has operated. A patient who had a bilateral retinal detachment. Simultaneously he went blind because he had a giant retinal tear in both the eyes. And so we operated both his eyes, we repaired the retinal detachment, and now almost 4-5 months later he is very happy, he can see, he can go about with his profession, he has clear vision in both the eyes. And this is again a young chap who had a surgery multiple times, he kept on having recurrent retinal detachment. Finally we operated him, and after the last surgery he is doing stable, and there are smiles everywhere. This is just a small video about 27 gauge vitrectomy. So those are the ports being made, those are the openings through which the surgeon enters the eye. And they are very small openings, around just 0.4 millimeters in diameter. So those are the 3 ports, and now there's a biplanar entry that Dr. Natarajan has made, so that the ports are self-sealing. These instruments, even after you enter the eye, they don't require stitches, they don't require anything to be stitched, so there are no suture-related complications. Sorry. I think we need to play from the
Slideshow.
I think so, yeah. That's Aris, can you?
Escape.
Yes. Yeah.
And now you can take the cursor forward.
Okay. Yeah, you have the original movie, for example. You have it here? Being done, and silicone oil being injected. Yeah, so that at the end of, for injecting silicone oil, he's made a 23 gauge port so that the injection is faster. Yes. about it. Yeah, I think that about summarizes the essence of 27 gate surgery. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions from any person of the audience? Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, all of you who have taken the trouble to join us today. And as Aditya Jyot enters its 25th year in 2015, we look forward to all your blessings and support. I wish you all a very happy new year. And we hope that we have great luminaries like Dr. Dua visiting us even in the near future. Thank you very much, sir, for spending the last 2 days with us. We have learned a lot, and I'm sure we will put all of that into practice. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.